Two work groups enter the mountain from different sides. Almost 530 meters of monolithic stone separate them. No satellites, laser levels, or ability to see each other. Nevertheless, they meet deep inside the massif. This tunnel opens our list of 5 locations where the main question isn't how was this built, but for what purpose. Approximately 25 centuries ago, Jerusalem found itself under siege. The Assyrian army was already at its walls, and King Hezekiah faced a critical problem. The city's only water source was outside. The ruler gave an order to cut a passage to the water directly through the rock, and they had to dig towards each other. This structure has survived to this day. Today, you can go down there and see with your own eyes the exact spot where the 2 teams of stonecutters met. This is our first point in the review of 5 ancient underground worlds. We will visit Jerusalem, the Andes in Peru, Malta, Bavaria, and Sri Lanka. 5 different civilizations, 5 eras, and 5 absolutely dissimilar tasks. But there is something in common. None of these objects is a random cave. Each of them is a complex engineering solution whose functions often baffle researchers. What lies beneath our feet is not just soil. It is a colossal archive of data that humanity is only just beginning to decipher. Our analysis has no room for esotericism, only dry facts. We will subject each place to strict analysis. What kind of structure is it? Who built it? And most importantly, why? If the purpose of above-ground pyramids or temples usually doesn't cause debate, underground, conventional logic often fails. Standard explanations rarely work here. 5 systems, 5 approaches, 1 planet. Let's return to Jerusalem in 700 BC. The Assyrian advance is a fact recorded in the Bible, Assyrian Chronicles, and confirmed by excavations of Israeli archaeologists. The danger was extremely tangible. Hezekiah's solution in this situation looks like a pure triumph of engineering thought. The Gihon Spring is located outside the city. During a siege, access to it is immediately cut off. This means water must be brought inside, but not through an open channel, but through a hidden tunnel in the limestone mass, dozens of meters deep. The distance is over half a kilometer. 2 teams start working from opposite sides, moving towards each other. Any modern foreman would say this is a sure path to disaster. Ancient builders had no topographical maps or surveyors with instruments. Nothing is visible through a 100-meter-thick rock. The only option is to tap the rock, hoping to hear colleagues from the other side. Ronnie Reich and Eli Shukran from the Israel Antiquities Authority consider this hypothesis the most probable. Nevertheless, the accuracy of the junction is astonishing. The thing is, the tunnel doesn't go straight. It winds in an S shape. On the path between 2 points, which are much closer in a straight line, the workers laid 530 meters of passage. Despite all the loops, the 2 teams were only a couple of feet off. Traces of this error are visible only at the junction point. A small ledge remained on the ceiling there. They had to slightly adjust the height at the end, but they found each other. Just think about it. They met in the center of a rock massif. This is pure engineering, not a miracle. In 1880, the so-called Siloam inscription was discovered on the wall of the passage. The text in ancient Hebrew describes the culmination of the work. While the stone cutters were still swinging their axes, each heard the voice of his comrade. On the day of the breakthrough, the workers struck towards each other, axe to axe. Today, this artifact is kept in Istanbul. Before us is one of the oldest technical reports in history, directly indicating the method: orientation by sound. How was this technically implemented? There are 3 main theories. According to the first, workers followed a natural fissure in the stone, which explains the curves of the path. The second version insists on acoustic tapping of the walls. The third, supported by researchers from Cambridge and Jerusalem University, suggests a combination of surface marking and sound correction underground. Radiocarbon analysis of the layers in the tunnel confirms the object was created precisely in the 8th century BC, during Hezekiah's era. The fact remains, the meeting took place. But the question is different. Was it just a successful solution to a physical problem? Or did ancient masters understand the structure of the Earth's interior much deeper than we are used to thinking? A straight line would have been enough for a simple water flow. Why the S-shaped turns? Why such incredible precision in the slope, only a few centimeters over the entire length of the route? Geology suggests that the curves helped bypass hard rocks, but the precise water incline is not luck. It's calculation. We still don't know all the answers, and that's a sign of honest research. Let's move to another continent and another era. Peruvian Andes, 3,000 years BC. Altitude, 3,000 meters. Chavín de Huántar. This temple complex is unique. Inside it, there are no spacious halls, only a tangled labyrinth. Narrow corridors, tiny rooms, and sharp turns. Archaeologist John Rick from Stanford studied this place for decades and concluded the entire building is designed as a giant resonator. Acoustics here work against the laws of open space. Inside, you hear sounds that seem to emerge from nowhere. It's impossible to pinpoint the source of a voice. This is not mysticism, but a cold calculation of room parameters. In the center of the temple, archaeologists found 20 Strombus galeatus conch trumpets, brought from the Pacific coast. To bring them here, they had to overcome hundreds of miles and a huge altitude difference. These are not just offerings to the gods, they are working tools, carefully drilled with holes for playing. Research by Miriam Kolar's group, published in Archaeoacoustics Scientific Journals from 2010 to 2016, confirms the geometry of Chavin's passages selectively amplifies some frequencies and dampens others. Ancient builders calibrated the thickness of the partitions and the angles of turns so that the sound of the conch, echoing in one chamber, filled the entire complex, while remaining bodiless and omnipresent. The measurement data is undeniable, even for the most ardent skeptics. The point isn't whether the temple can alter sound. It does. The question is intent. Was it built for this effect? And if the answer is yes, then what was the purpose? The official version states it was a tool of power. Priests used acoustic tricks to suppress the will of the parishioners. When the voice of a deity sounds directly from the walls and you don't see the speaker, it's hard to resist suggestion. This is the practical application of physics for political ends. No magic, just calculation. John Rick describes it this way. You stand in the gallery. Someone blows a conch shell above, but the sound hits you in the back from a solid wall. It's just a reflection of the wave, but for someone unfamiliar with physics, it's the voice of the mountain itself. But there's a deeper layer. How did people figure this out before mathematical formulas existed? The Chavin masters didn't read textbooks on wave theory, but they knew how to achieve the result. The temple was built over centuries, expanded and remodeled, but in each new phase, the acoustic properties were preserved. What we have here is not just a stone building. It's a 5,000-year-old musical instrument hidden in the heart of the Andes. And if you think this is the limit of ancient technology, we're just beginning our dive. The Maltese Hypogeum descends 3 levels. The remains of almost 7,000 people rest here. In one of the chambers, an acoustic resonance at 110 hertz was discovered. This physical parameter directly affects the functioning of the human brain. The hypogeum is not just a hole in the rock. We are looking at an entire underground civilization, which it would be absurd to call a mere tunnel. Ħal-Saflieni. It was found purely by chance in 1902. In the town of Paola, near Valletta, a house was being built and a water reservoir was being dug. Workers broke through a stone vault and discovered a void that no human foot had entered for 5 millennia. This site is a Neolithic heritage. Experts from the University of Malta and Heritage Malta believe it was created between 4000 and 2500 BC. It is older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. For Europe, it is the only prehistoric underground city of such scale. The structure is divided into 3 levels. From above, everything looks familiar, ordinary burial grottos. But on the second level, an architectural marvel begins. The builders carved precise replicas of surface sanctuaries into the monolith, complete with their niches, beams, and vaults. This is not masonry, it's sculptural work on the scale of a mountain. The deepest third level plunges 23 feet into the earth. That's where the famous oracle chamber is hidden. The room is quite small. A recess is carved into the wall at face level. If you speak words into it, something incredible happens. In 2014, a group led by Paolo De Bertolis and other scientists confirmed the chamber acts as an amplifier for low male voices strictly at a frequency of 110 hertz. The precision is astonishing, not 108 and not 115. Female vocals or high sounds are extinguished here. The rock cuts them off. The stone turns into a filter that transmits a narrow range of frequencies throughout the complex. If you are standing below and someone speaks into the niche above, you hear the voice, but don't understand where it's coming from. The sound loses its direction, becoming omnipresent. Neuroscientists have proven in laboratories that this particular frequency changes the activity of brain areas responsible for speech. How exactly did this affect ancient listeners? The honest answer is, we don't know yet. Research by Ian Cook from the University of California records certain reactions, while other scientists dispute them. But the fact of resonance itself is not a hypothesis, but repeatedly verified physics. The only question is how it was used. And this brings us to the main question of our episode. What is all this for? Why expend effort on an acoustic trap for bass? Why dig 23 feet deep if one room would suffice for prayers? Why copy surface temples where no one can see them? And for whom are ochre spirals drawn on the ceilings if, without an oil lamp, there is absolute darkness? The simplest version is that it's a cemetery. Indeed, the remains of 7,000 people, buried at different times, were found there. The status of a necropolis is confirmed by both radiocarbon dating and archaeological reports. However, the cemetery concept doesn't explain the complex acoustics and architectural refinements. Why adapt a building to the biological rhythms of the brain if it's just a morgue? And why go so deep if there was enough space for graves on the surface? The term tomb is too small for Ħal-Saflieni. This space was created for sound rituals and mass events. Only centuries later, perhaps, new generations adapted it for burials. The builders pursued a different goal, and those who came later simply occupied a ready-made place, not fully understanding its true essence. We are dealing with advanced acoustic engineering in an era that historians dismissively call pre-literate. It would be convenient to attribute this to later alterations, but the measurements and dates are relentless. The resonance is embedded in the very structure of the Neolithic building. This is an extremely inconvenient fact for official history. And now, a plot twist that will make the American viewer look at European antiquities differently. Bavaria and Austria. Hidden underground here are about 2,000 narrow passages. They can be under a farmer's field, in a forest thicket, or directly under the foundation of an old church. Locals call them Erdstall. If you've ever walked through southern Germany, know this: it's quite possible that an ancient tunnel stretched right beneath your boots, and no one told you about it. And these are not tourist tales. The University of Vienna and German speleological associations have been studying these holes for years. Even the German Research Foundation has allocated grants for these purposes. But the outcome is the same. We still don't know exactly when or why they were dug. They look like this: narrow tubes in clay or sandstone, exactly the width of a person's shoulders. An adult feels cramped in them. The length varies from 65 feet to several hundred. The strangest part is the Schlupfe, extremely tight passages between levels where you can only squeeze through alone and with great difficulty. There's no decoration, no gold, no skeletons, no forgotten tools. Emptiness. And this is the main headache for science. If there's nothing in an object, it's impossible to date it. We can determine the age of the stone, but the stone was always there. We can date a pottery shard, but there isn't one there. Rare organic finds show a range from the 10th to the 13th century. But this is only the time when debris might have entered the tunnel. The construction technology itself shows no evolution. Erdstalls appear out of nowhere in their finished form. They have no drafts or, later, improved versions. How do you study an object with no inscriptions or finds? All that's left is to speculate. There are 3 hypotheses. The first is shelters in case of war. The second is places for secret rituals where complete isolation was required. The third is havens for souls, some metaphysical objects from folk beliefs. Archaeologists from Vienna, such as Edith Bednarik, believe that the truth lies somewhere in the middle. In different places, they could have been used in different ways. Science doesn't always provide spectacular answers, and that's often disappointing. But classical explanations don't work here. The shelter version is falling apart. To save people, you need food, water, ventilation, and at least 2 exits. Erdstalls don't have any of that. They are too cramped for a family, and the absence of soot traces from torches or food waste indicates that no one lived there. The tunnels are sterilely clean. Just 7 feet underground and absolute unknown. No one can tell you whose hands dug it. This isn't an exotic find from the Far East or the Amazon jungle. This is a mystery hidden right beneath the foundations of the old world, and we're at a dead end. Now, let's travel to Sri Lanka, so this story doesn't seem too simple to you. The foothills of the Ravana Ella waterfalls conceal a network of caves whose labyrinths are still not fully mapped. Folk legends firmly weave these places into the stories of the Ramayana. Scientists are more cautious. In some halls, there are clear traces of tools, while other halls were created exclusively by nature. The real state of affairs is that without comprehensive archaeological research, we won't know either the exact age of the object or its original purpose. In our story, Ravana Ella appears not for proof. It serves as an important signal. Not every ancient underground complex fits into familiar frameworks. There are locations where a lack of information prevents us from fitting facts into ready-made answers. Sometimes admitting one's own ignorance becomes the most honest and compelling argument. This brings us to the main question, on which the entire plot rests. 5 objects, completely dissimilar tasks. Hezekiah's tunnel provided the city with water during wars. Chavín de Huántar transformed sound into a temple ritual. Ħal-Saflieni combined the functions of a cemetery and an acoustic hall. Erdstall remains a mystery. Ravana Ella is still waiting for its researchers. What do they have in common? It's not about the period of construction, not about the tools, and not even about the goals. What unites them is the very logic. For the people of these 5 civilizations, the ground beneath their feet was not empty space. They perceived the Earth's mass as a complete raw material for construction, as an effective tool, and a living space. Today, we have practically lost this approach. The modern world strives upwards, erecting skyscrapers. When we go underground, we only pursue everyday needs, laying cables, parking a car, or running a subway train. For us, it's just a utilitarian necessity, devoid of symbolism or deep sensory experience. In ancient times, the world was viewed differently. The solid ground beneath one's feet was not considered nothing. It was a complete world with its own laws. By comparing these 5 monuments, you will see a clear picture. The underground space is a complete infrastructure. It's not just an abandoned pit or a crypt. Each such object had its own functionality, and the masters who created them clearly calculated the physical impact on humans. Perhaps the main conclusion of our video is not about finding mystical secrets of the past. More important is that ancient architects masterfully possessed a level of reality that we have almost written off. And finally, a short personal observation. While working on the script, I studied a map of the Bavarian Erdstalls. They dot the region like constellations, although most of them have long been abandoned or filled with earth. It's quite likely that right now, beneath me, there's an ancient passage, and it's much closer than the entrance to the nearest subway. 5 systems, 5 different tasks, and one common question. If these are elements of infrastructure, then who were the people who dedicated so much time to life beneath the surface? Why is there almost nothing left of their civilizations, except for accidental finds that we stumble upon when digging foundations or installing water tanks? Most likely, the truth cannot be found in libraries. It is hidden right beneath your souls. And it's still there.